Abandoned projects, you have to look at, first of all, at the conceptual stage. The ones, majority of those that were abandoned, were they adequate or planned for the area where they were needed? The question is no. We are looking at geographical spread of spending the federal government of Nigeria's money. And because of this spread, which in some area you call ethnic spread or whatever name we call it in this country, people now tend to put pressure on government, bring this project to my vicinity. But at the end of the day, by the time government start that project, and it is realized that that project is not viable or useful for that environment, relatively such projects tend not to be funded, and they are called abandoned projects. That's number one. Number two, the other aspect which had been the bane in the past is giving contracts to contractors that could not perform. They've not been adequately accredited, and that is why in my own federation, which is the Federation of Construction Industry, we have a benchmark for all contractors in this country to be registered in such a way that they can give you best practice delivery. But in the past, it wasn't so. It was all commerce game. And the present government, I think in the past 5 years, have been trying to address that. And that's why you see similar things like this conference, that of the corruption in industry, fine-tuning the registration of contractors, etc., coming up at this stage. I think Nigeria is going in the right direction. I can only plead with the National Assembly that all these things being packaged together should be approved on time, so that Nigeria can now move to the next phase and get people that can deliver within time, and government also having the funding to go along to save ourselves from abandoned projects.
There are currently 12,000 abandoned projects in the country, yet we see new projects being implemented every day in Nigeria. Shouldn't the country be looking at reviving the abandoned ones rather than implementing new projects?
Partly I agree with you, in the sense that why should you have an abandoned project? As I said earlier, a set of officers come into governance today by the transitional arrangement we have, and another set comes in there another 4 years. A project is not yet completed. The man that has come in newly will probably want to stamp his name on his own project. And rather than looking at a job that has been abandoned, re-evaluating it, and because of time and fluctuation, this then tends to increase the cost, and the man would rather prefer to have a project that can be stamped on his name than the one that is already abandoned, escalated. And he will also look at what I also talked about, which is the usefulness of that project to that particular environment. I'll give you an example. If a road project that is to link 2 cities in this country is being abandoned, that project will be focused on, re-evaluated and done. But if you have a project, a road project that is not within the city, but is going through somebody's village because it was opportune to be there at that time, whoever is the new minister will not look at that project. He will just look at it and look at one that can benefit the generality of Nigerians. This country is growing. As it is known, we are probably about 160 million. In the next 10 years, we might be about 250 million. So the infrastructural requirements will continue to be there. And to focus on paying or reviving bad debt, the abandoned contract, I agree with you. But government has to manage the little resources within what they have to continue to move the government of Nigeria forward for the benefit of the people.
The government has recently set up a committee on guidelines for the management and implementation of federal infrastructure projects. How do you think the setup of this committee will ensure that the practice of this worrisome act is avoided?
I know some of the members of the committee, and I can assure you that with some of these things that we are now doing everywhere in the country, all over from one state to the other, to best practice delivery, this will be packaged together and given to them to study and put into a blueprint for government. Once this is done, because what is being done presently is not just at the state level, is whatever is done centrally by the government along with the state officers is now going to be put into one enforcement documentation, which will now be used across the country. And like I said earlier, and like Engineer Rafindadi said, this is the only way by which we can practice business of construction as it is done internationally.
Now, how best do you think we can do our service delivery? Because one can clearly see that corruption seems to play a huge role in project management and procurement processes. In recent times, Nigerians have seen, a lot of corruption stories making headlines in the news. What can be done?
It starts from design, and whoever has put a design together and that design failed should be sanctioned. That's why Current is at the forefront of fighting corruption with adequately registered and adequately qualified personnel that are in the construction industry. If the design is wrong, right, the designer will compromise with the contractor as best as possible, and corruption creeps in, because the contractor also will want to cut corners in ensuring that that is delivered, but at what cost to you and I in this country. We are all trying to stop that. At the planning stage, at the execution, even at the execution, the problem there is funding.